So a couple of days ago, I got this DM on Discord, basically telling me that someone was impersonating me over on Reddit. Now, I have never had this problem before, and it's certainly odd that someone would do this without even putting in the effort to use the correct profile pic. But we have a lot to unpack here today, so let's just get right into it. So the picture here looks like a screenshot from another Discord server where this specific user is using my channel name on YouTube to spread this rumor that Dragon's Dogma 2 expansion will be announced at this year's Tokyo Game Show. Now, for most people, it would be easy to call this out and notice the obvious flaws in this fake post, but it seems most people over on Reddit actually believes this, and it sparked some really toxic conversations that I want to address in this video before we get into the actual positive things happening over on Steam, with a lot of non-public updates getting tested lately and the possibility of the DLC getting teased at the Tokyo Game Show, or Sony's State of Play earlier this month. Looking back at the Reddit post, there's a lot of hope, of course, that something will be revealed during the game show. And we have some interesting comments here I want to go through. So the first one from the connoisseur states, "Honestly, I don't want an expansion. I want the rest of the game I already bought. It should be an update. The idea of paying more after getting ripped off is disappointing enough that I believe it. You know I'm right. They sold us Dragon's Dogma 2 on the premise that it was more complete, more expansive sequel, the game they wanted to make, but the experience is undeniably less than the decade-old predecessor. It's outrageous to sell the game on a lie and follow that up by asking for even more money. In your heart, you know that's true. First of all, I agree that many of the basic flaws of Dragon's Dogma 2 should have been fixed by the post-launch updates. We can all agree on this. They could have given us at least a hard mode. That would have remedied the problems with enemy scaling and improved replayability for all players. The way they did this for the first game was with a free DLC pack containing speedrun mode and hard mode, released on December 2012. This was 6 months after the release of the game, and since we're currently 6 months after the release of Dragon's Dogma 2, with both Sony's State of Play and Tokyo Game Show right around the corner, a major free DLC update for the sequel in September would make sense, considering it was during this timeframe we got the big DLC pack for the first game. This would also explain Itsuno's exit from Capcom at the start of this month. If the DLC for Dragon's Dogma 2 is mostly complete in terms of planning and major decisions, then it would make sense for Capcom to give the reins to, let's say, Kento Kinoshita, who directed Dark Arisen while Itsuno went to work on Devil May Cry. A free DLC update getting released during this year's game shows is very likely. Now, getting an actual expansion might be later this year or early next year. The only thing that's really in the way is the release of Monster Hunter Wilds. All we know at this point is that it will release in 2025. It could be anywhere from January to July, and that in turn begs the question, will they release Wilds or the DLC first? Now, I want to bring up this leaked photo again, not because I think it's from any reliable source of information, but to help us look at this visually. Another important factor to consider here is that Capcom's fiscal year ends on the 21st of March, which is why they released Dragon's Dogma 2 just a week before this important date, so that they would get most of their earnings for the sequel included in the last year's operating profits. Looking then at the release date for Monster Hunter Wilds in 2025, it makes sense to get this game out as well just before their fiscal year's end. I think what makes this leak so hard to believe for a majority of the community is the fact that they are suggesting the DLC for the sequel will get released only 8 months after Dragon's Dogma 2. But here's my counter-argument and theory. I think the only way they can get a DLC out this quickly is to cut out parts of the main game by design and put these gameplay elements like new vocations, enemies, and playable areas in a DLC package that will draw in players again. This strategy is a no-brainer from a business standpoint, but will of course be viewed as a bit of a shitty move by the gaming community. And that brings me to this next comment by Potatoes. Apparently I'm the one responsible for us not getting 16 vocations. And although I rarely respond to comments like this that come off as somewhat bitter and uninformed, I want to break this down for my community here on YouTube. So I think the 16 different classes they refer to here is from a video I made back in February, sharing my theories based on information the community had gathered so far. I think the key word here is theory. And just because I might be a voice of authority in the Dragon's Dogma community, it goes without saying that in the end, all of these videos are just my thoughts and hopes for a game I have been living and breathing for the last 4 years. That I teased the demo that didn't exist is also taken out of context here, since the character creator was labeled as a demo, and that is how I received the news from my contacts. At the time, all I knew was that a demo was coming and I wanted to share this with the community. I also shared this teaser with information I had received from Capcom during the time of the official pawns the different creators were given. Lastly, they bring up this video I shared on my channel. It's essentially clips I put together from a video that popped up on my feed. The video blew up at the time, and I think that's why some people might feel I was stealing their thunder. But since I also didn't do any commentary for that video, I do understand why Potatoes here is viewing this in a somewhat dimmer light. Alright, with that out of the way, I want to cover the multitude of Steam updates we have gotten lately, and the first time this was brought to my attention was from this Reddit user, reporting he was following the Steam update history every single day. Now, they mentioned that the DLC folders have been updated twice with new depots added, so I went over to the Steam page for Dragon's Dogma 2 to see for myself. The first thing that was looking strange to me is under related apps, where we see that the character creator for some reason gets an update only 11 days ago. It makes no sense for this to get updated 6 months later unless it has something to do with the upcoming DLC that needs to be compatible with this app as well. But this could also just mean nothing, so let's look closer at the depots and what we can find there. Just to get the baseline understanding, I found explanations for what packages, depots and builds mean when referring to the Steam data we're looking at here. And when sorting these depots with descending ID numbers, we see that there are a total of 8 unknown apps that are recently being worked on if you go by the logic that higher ID numbers are newer depots. If there are any data miners out there that could make any sense of this, then we could maybe get some solid evidence for what these updates actually mean. But until then, we at least now know that they are still working on the game, and a DLC reveal might be much closer than we think.